Hey guys, I hope this video finds you well. I'm no expert in this virtual learning environment, so we're going to have to learn this as we go. I'm planning to deliver your material this way for the next few weeks and see how it goes. And if anything needs changed, we'll change it. I hope I'm going to be able to reach most of you this way that actually have internet access. I hope all of you are doing well. I hope you're not sick. I hope you haven't been around people who are sick. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I miss seeing you guys in class. I know you find that hard to believe, but we're gonna do this manner for the next little while, like I said, and see how it goes. Um, if you noticed, I've uploaded the notes for this particular chapter we're fixing to cover. It's chapter 9. So we've only got 4 chapters left to cover. So it'll go at a fairly quick pace. But the material is there in Google Classroom. So this video today will cover section 1 notes, so just like we normally do. Then I'll post some questions for you to answer and submit, as well as I'm going to embed 3 questions into this video so that I can document that you actually watched the video. And the material or the answer for these questions you can find on that particular slide that we're on at that time. It's just for documentation purposes. And I'll give you guys a little credit for doing so. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. This PowerPoint is just like you're used to seeing, chapter 9. And it deals primarily with people starting to market their products and their manufactured goods and selling them, as well as people beginning to head west and start to settle towards the west some. And then you'll also see towards the end of this section, we work our way down into Texas and have some issues there with Mexico. But that's what's basically encompassed in chapter 9. So this first section today is the market revolution. It's talking about changes in the way things are bought, purchased, manufactured, things of that nature all across America. And that's what I'm going to cover. And like I said, I'll embed 3 questions. I think it is. Yeah, I've got 3. I want you to answer 3 questions, and then I'll place a document in Classroom for you to write the answers or record the answers to these questions. So you can always come back to this video, pause at that spot that we're at, wherever the question was, document your answer, and submit whatever it is that you're submitting as it relates to the document I prepare for you to put the answers on. All right, so here we go. There are 7 slides, but they're not very lengthy, and I'll try to move through this as quickly as possible. I've been advised by some people who have been working with this Meet software that videos in excess of 15 minutes start to give issues. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. All right, so the market revolution, section 1 of chapter 9. Early on in the 1800s, your farm families, they were subsistence farmers, meaning that they were basically self-sufficient. They grew their own food. They produced their own goods at home, whatever they needed. The only things that they would purchase was something that they could not make themselves. And if you think about that today, we almost live a lifestyle that's completely right the opposite from that, where we only come up or improvise when we can't purchase what it is that we're looking for. But as the century moves on, the 1800s roll on, and you get to the 1840s range or somewhere towards the middle of the century, 1840, 1860 range, your farmers, they began to specialize. So they would sort of expand what they're growing as far as acreage, and they would specialize in 1 or 2 special crops, whatever they may be, and they'd be cash crops because they're growing them for sale. So they're basically creating a market for agriculture. So it leads to market revolution, which is people buying and selling goods rather than making them. And that's the first thing. Like I said, these questions, I'm telling you the question right here at the answer. This is just for documentation that, hey, you saw the video. So the first question I'd like you to answer is define, or it's not really a question, it's a definition. I want you to define market revolution. And as we move on down here towards the bottom, the entrepreneurial spirit, capitalism, your private control of means of production used for profit. It's basically business, just running your own business, trying to do well for yourself, your family, make money, um, things of that nature. That's what makes the economy grow at this time is business capital. People having money, cash flow, property, machines that aren't indebted to the banks. Um, People are starting to spend money, which frees up people to start specializing in particular manufactured goods and putting them on the market and selling them. So an entrepreneur is somebody who takes their very own money, puts it into something new. Um, if it works out, it's good. If it doesn't, they lose. So there are risks to doing something like this. It's either a great loss or a great profit for these entrepreneurs. And like I said, those are people who are trying to go out on their own, start something from scratch, develop it, polish it, make it well, or make it prosperous or whatever, so that they can be beneficial from a monetary aspect going forward for their families. The second slide deals with new inventions, inventor, and entrepreneurs. They develop new products. Charles Goodyear, for example, created vulcanized rubber in 1839. I think we all know what Goodyear stands for and what that industry does. The sewing machine is developed, patented by Elias Hull. I.M. Singer adds a foot treadle to the sewing machine. So you've heard some of your grandmothers might have a Singer sewing machine sitting at home in the corner somewhere. That leads to a better way to make clothing, factory production. So once you get sewing machines, high-speed machines that can sew well and quickly and efficiently, it leads to a decrease in the need for people to produce their own clothing. So the factories produce it at a better rate and cheaper, so that causes the price of clothing to go down. So prices drop on clothing by over 75% as it relates to the sewing machine. Impact on the households. At the bottom here, farmers begin using mechanized farm equipment. It boosts industry output. So what you'll see on a slide or two later, what some of that equipment is. Technology lowers the cost of factory items. Workers become consumers. Now, technology in that regard doesn't deal with virtual learning like we're doing right here. Technology to them is manufactured or machines that make manufacturing easier in all aspects of society, whether it be the clothing industry or the rubber industry like Goodyear or the farming industry or anything of that nature. That's what that's dealing with as it relates to the word technology. All right, moving on. 1837, Samuel Morse, distress call, Morse code. Samuel F.B. Morse. He is the one who develops a telegraph. So you tap a message in code to a recipient. Once you send the message, it travels down a copper wire. That's what carries the message. And that allows businesses and railroads to communicate with each other, eventually shipping as it relates to the railroad or shipping on water as it relates to communication with other ships, ports, things of that nature, barges. That's how they communicated. It's the most beneficial way at the time to send messages. So you'll see how that develops over time eventually. But Samuel Morse develops this initially in 1837. And that is the second question. What actually transmitted a telegraph? What is it that delivers or carries the message? That's the second question. Okay. All right, we're going to go to the next one. Transportation. Robert Fulton developed a steamboat. Could travel the Hudson in 32 hours, or 150 miles of the Hudson, 32 hours time. The Hudson River links you to the Atlantic Ocean. Many of you know where the Hudson is. The Hudson's where they landed that commercial jet that had an engine malfunction related to geese in the engine at takeoff. But the Hudson River is a large river. So if you see any of the news headlines from that incident, you know kind of what that river looks like. It's very large and links you to the Atlantic Ocean. So the Atlantic Ocean then would obviously allow you to travel the world as it relates to transportation on water. The water is better than a railroad as it relates to, traveling, or not traveling, but transporting very heavy equipment, raw materials in very large bulk, things of that nature. Canals start to be more heavily used. cost goes down because of the usage on canals. So more people started to use them. Basically, a canal, we know that it's just connecting two larger waterways through a narrow isthmus of land somewhere. Once the Erie Canal really takes off with usage, people start building other canals and other locations that are needed. So those canals will connect your farmers out west to the northeast, and the northeast will then connect them to the world via the small canals out in the west, the Hudson River in the northeast, the Atlantic Ocean at the ports of the Atlantic coast. So your Midwestern farmer, for the very first time, can ship grain wherever he chooses, wherever his customers are. All right, and we will go to the next one. Railroads, 1840s. Shipping on the railroad was much costlier than by canal or on water. The railroads are faster. They could operate in the winter. They can go further inland. So there are benefits to the railroad and the waters. It's just a matter of the scenario, where you're located for your market or your industry, wherever it is. All those things contribute to which transportation method you would prefer. Early train travel wasn't very comfortable for the passengers, but it was a way to travel for a person as well. So people, as well as manufactured goods, would travel by train. By the 1850s, the railroads expand, cost drops, safety is increased, and they really develop quickly. And you won't be far from having transcontinental railroads that span the entire country. Okay. Regional links improve transportation, communication. They make regions interdependent. So the Northeast can rely on the Southeast for this, or the Midwest for this. So because we can communicate with each other and we can transport things to one another with railroads and water and canals, it makes us become interdependent. So we are depending on other people instead of ourselves. So we don't have to be quite as self-sufficient as we once were. As it relates to that, the National Road, or Cumberland Road, the Cumberland, like some people call it Cumberland Turnpike, Cumberland Highway. It was a national road. It's one of the very first national highway projects. It's from 1838. It was 620 or some odd miles at its greatest width, or greatest length at its height of usage. It spanned from Cumberland, Maryland to Springfield, Illinois, went through Columbus, Ohio. Many people traveled this route as they headed west to settle. It's one of the very first federally funded highways. Now, what are they driving on that? That's, the Model T Ford doesn't come out until when? I don't know if any of you are aware of that, but we are not to that point yet. 1908 or somewhere in that ballpark's when the Model T's released. So they are still traveling with buggy and horse-drawn carriage or whatnot. But the Cumberland Highway provided them a good, safe travel route to go westward. So that was in this era. Southern agriculture, most all the South's agriculture relies on cotton, tobacco, and rice. The South doesn't really have the capital for factories. So the North is pretty much going to handle the industry up north or whatever, or the industry will be handled up north, and most all the agriculture will take place down here in the South. Okay, money for these Southern farmers, most of their money's tied up in land equity. They're indebted to the banks on buying land, and they've got slaves, things of that nature. So industrial places are more suitable up north than they are south. And the South has better farm ground than the North, and vice versa. So it just works well the way that laid out. All right, moving to the next one. We're almost done too, guys. We got this is actually the last slide. So Northeast shipping and manufacturing, canals and railroads, they turn the Northeast into a center of commerce. So commerce is business. Basically, the Northeast becomes a big hub for business. New York City, this is where it starts. It was a very key link between the U.S. farms and European markets. So they're going to ship goods across the Atlantic Ocean to the European nations. This was a big deal, and that's why New York City is what it is today. Is it started all the way back then in the 1800s. The great rise in manufacturing. They've got more goods that are better and less expensive. So if you can get more for more goods that are better and less expensive, that is a good philosophy to have. And the last thing here, Midwest farming. John Deere, we know John Deere, or what a John Deere looks like. John Deere, the individual, invented the steel plow. Farmers begin to replace ox with horses, things of that nature. So that's basically the steel plow is going to really help speed up the farming process. Cyrus McCormick invented a reaper, mechanical reaper that basically harvests things for you, which basically increases the yield of what your crops are. Basically, one farmer could do the work of five as a result of the mechanical reaper. So that decreases the need for farm production or farm labor, or the farmers could buy more land and keep their numbers where they are and just have the reaper do most of the work and have a larger yield in general for having more acreage. Um, the farmers at this time, they'll shift from subsistence farming to growing cash crops and cash crops for business. Subsistence farming there is basically where the farmers are just growing just what their needs are for themselves, their family, things of that nature. And then cash crops, obviously, you're growing one or two things for money and it becomes your job. So that's it for section 1 of chapter 9. I don't think I gave you your third question. It's on this slide right here. It is. Who invented the steel plow? That is question 3 for video documentation purposes. And again, I'll upload you a place to submit that in Google Classroom. And I'm trying to get back out to the main screen here. Oh, maybe I can't read. It says stop presenting. Okay. All right. So there's section 1, chapter 9. I got 3 questions. I'm going to put this on YouTube, put the link to YouTube in Classroom for you to watch. And hopefully we can get through this together one day at a time. I hope this works for you guys. If it doesn't, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate whatsoever to ask me or reach out to me through email or whatever. And we will be in touch again soon. Y'all have a good evening.